Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the INFOWARS Nightly News. I'm Darren McBreen. It is Friday, June 29th, 2012. Here's a quick look at what we have lined up for you this evening.
Tonight, Michael Moore and the rest of the fake liberal establishment celebrate the upholding of Obamacare by the Supreme Court. Is the Second Amendment next? Also, fill me up, Scotty. William Shatner has a run-in with the TSA. And Darren McBreen sits down with Leslie Manookian, director of The Greater Good. They will shed light on this vaccine crisis that is currently enveloping America. All this and more on the INFOWARS Nightly News.
Well, as you all know by now, yesterday the Supreme Court betrayed our republic and upheld Obamacare. And right on cue, Michael Moore is, well, he's declaring victory and celebrating the decision as he applauds the bill that was written, well, primarily by the very insurance companies he claims to oppose. So as George Orwell rolls in his grave, as the anti-corporate crusader says the Supreme Court's decision was a great victory, and it should be met with loud cheers throughout the country. But wait, there's more. There's Michael Moore yesterday on MSNBC.
This victory, I think, really should be a mandate for all of us now to just keep moving forward so that everyone is covered and so that the private profit-making insurance companies are not running the show. They're still running the show. That part, that piece of it is going to screw this thing up somewhere down the line. People are still going to be hurt on some level because the decision about the bottom line is still going to be there. That has to be removed.
So let me get this straight. Michael Moore, he's celebrating this as a victory, while at the same time he's admitting that the for-profit insurance companies are still running the show. I don't get it. I mean, he didn't mention that the insurance companies, they actually wrote the damn bill to begin with, but nothing to fear because Mitt Romney says he will repeal Obamacare if elected, which kind of reminds me of back when Obama campaigned. Well, remember when he campaigned to close down Gitmo and repeal the Patriot Act? We all know how that turned out. Romney, obviously well aware that the vast majority of Americans are dead set against Obamacare, thus the fairy tale campaign promise. And now Alex Jones, Alex has been telling you about Obamacare for years now, and it's always fun to go back in the archives and look at what he said in the past. And well, here's something from 2009 that still holds true today. Let's take a look.
The last decade has been a horrible time for freedom. We've seen the Patriot Act. We've seen all these preemptive wars of aggression. We've seen the military being used more and more on the streets. We've seen the federal government triple under George W. Bush, and now Obama has even broken that record. We were critics of George Bush tripling the size of government. It was hard to imagine that Barack Obama could do worse, but he has. He's dwarfed what Bush did because Barack Obama works for the very same private banks that Bush worked for and that Clinton worked for and that Bush Sr. before him was controlled by. And they want the government deep in debt. The national polls are conclusive. The vast majority of the American people do not want big government-run health care. They don't want Obamacare. And there's this giant lie being pushed by all these different TV ads I see being run by Rock the Vote and others, saying that insurance companies don't want this bill and the big corrupt banks are against it. Who do you think controls Obama? Who do you think controlled George W. Bush? The banks want big government. The insurance companies wrote this bill, and that it forces the American people to buy their overpriced insurance. It takes money out of people's paychecks. It gives you 5 years in prison or $250,000 fines if you don't go out and get the insurance. And the way that they've gotten it rammed through the Senate so far is completely illegal. Publicly promising hundreds of millions and in some cases billions of dollars of pork barrel to the senator states if they'll vote for it. It's incredible. And we have a headline story at PrisonPlanet.com titled, "The Stock Prices of Insurance Companies Say It All." And it shows the graphs where the stock prices of the insurance companies out there are just exploding because they wrote this legislation. It's a tax to them where the American people have to buy their product, and then it's also a tax to the federal government. We are a nation that has become bankrupt. Our dollar is dying because the world knows our government is spending more money than it can ever pay back. Ladies and gentlemen, government is a cancer. It is out of control. And the Republicans and the Democrats are addicted to big government. If we don't turn this around, this country is going to completely collapse. But the outrage doesn't stop there. We're seeing rhetoric out of the U.S. Senate and out of Chris Matthews and others on national television saying, if you oppose the big government takeover of health care, 1/7 to 1/6 of the economy, if you oppose that, you are a racist. What does that have to do with race? They're just race pimping and race baiting and injecting something into a debate that has nothing to do with it. In fact, I have the video clip here in front of me. There's an article up at INFOWARS.net by Steve Watson. Senator calls 2/3 of Americans opposing health bill right-wing militias and racists. Doesn't the establishment realize their last shreds of credibility are being destroyed? You're now a white supremacist if you don't want to be under government control. And by the way, in the bill, the death panels are still there. That's what they are in Europe. It's what they are in Canada. Tom Daschle wrote a book saying if you're above 60, and he's the guy that wrote the original bill, that you don't need eye surgery, that you don't need to be able to get the same medical care as a young person. This is eugenics. This is health care rationing. And we've got another story here that says healthcare bill death panels could only be repealed with supermajority. And we now have the subsection of the bill, section 3403 of the final version of the bill, says that it will take a supermajority in the future, they're writing this into the bill, to be able to repeal any of this and to be able to repeal the death panels. So it just goes on and on and on. And yes, it's being reported that under Obamacare, be prepared to wait 18 months to see a doctor. Another facet of this government takeover of health care is that it's another broken promise from Barack Obama. The guy that said he wouldn't hire any lobbyists hired more lobbyists than anybody before him. The guy that said he was going to get rid of the Patriot Act and he voted to expand it. The guy that said he was going to get all the troops out of Iraq immediately, and now he says basically never. The guy who has broken every promise that he made to the American people said that if you made less than $125,000 a year individually, or $250,000 per couple, that you would see no tax increases. And now in the health care bill, and we have all the subsections linked up on PrisonPlanet.com, so you can read it for yourself. Don't believe us, read it for yourself. There are at least 10 new massive taxes in the legislation against the American people. And the title of that article is Healthcare Bill is a Huge Tax Hike. And we're going to post all the links up in the corner of the screen so that you can go and read those for yourself. So even if you're for government-run socialist health care, you have to understand that Barack Obama is breaking his promises. Now, a lot of conservatives are against this bill because they realize it's a boondoggle. They realize that government certainly can't deliver care better than the private sector. They understand that it's a way for the government to control our lives and ration care. But real leftists, real socialists, real people who do believe in immoral asset redistribution, they are against this bill. And Dennis Kucinich is against it, saying it's a giant bailout for insurance companies. The insurance companies on record wrote the legislation. Howard Dean has come out saying this is a horrible deal because it cuts $41 million a year from Medicare and Medicaid. That's a conservative estimate. So your taxes go up, but the so-called free health care goes down. Taxes go up, the services go down. This whole thing is a giant fraud. But in closing, every major poll states that between 60 to 65, and some polls 70% of the American people that are against this bill. And that's why Harry Reid is in a big hurry to pass it, because they know every day that people have a chance to look into this legislation, the more people are going to wake up and speak out against it. And so that's why they're trying to stampede this through with this blitzkrieg. But real big government types, real people who believe in wealth redistribution, have come out and said this is a corporate looting, a scam, a fraud. Look, they told you back in 2008, in October, that the banker bailout bill was going to be used immediately to unfreeze mortgage lending. On October 4th, the day after they passed it, Paulson said, we're not going to tell you where the money's being spent, but we're not going to spend it on mortgages now. It's the same thing on everything they do. It turns into a fraud. Take the greenhouse gas taxes. You know, it turned out that they weren't going to cut any of the greenhouse gases, even if you believe they're bad, but it was going to be given as tax money to the private IMF and World Bank. Our government has been seized by offshore criminal banks. They are looting us. It is a private corporate takeover, and the bigger the government gets, the more money there is for big corporations to loot from the people. Big, powerful offshore corporations use government to rob you. Get that straight. And Howard Dean and Dennis Kucinich on the fake left are awake telling you this is a fraud. And then all the right-wingers are telling you it's a fraud. It is a fraud, but the elites in Washington, they want it, and they want to control your lives. We have a moderate chance of beating this. Certainly it's going to be political suicide for those that pass it, but they don't care. They'll go to the revolving door into corporate insurance company jobs as the insurance company stocks explode as it looks like this bill is about to pass. But we do have a chance to maybe beat it in the House. The House has already passed it. The Senate's set to pass it, but they have to go into conference committee and try to get the two bills straightened out. So put pressure on that House committee that's over health care, and just do whatever you can to educate the American people that this is a giant scam and a fraud. The news is reporting that right at 50% of the people in Detroit are unemployed. Ladies and gentlemen, that was another government boondoggle that was going to save everyone. NAFTA and GATT, look what it did. And it's the same thing with this health care. We will regret the day that this was rammed through. Our nation is being bankrupted by design. As Maurice Strong at the UN said, they want to destroy our industrial society to make us dependent on government. They love the crisis. As Rahm Emanuel said, don't let a good crisis go to waste. They want to run your lives.